Nothing. That's what the Pittsburgh Steelers did at the trade deadline. Nothing. Except for Kyle Duggar a couple days beforehand. And if that move happened on the trade deadline, maybe we're having a different conversation, but I still don't think that that conversation leads us to a place where we, as a collective, are optimistic, are sitting around going, yes, way to do it. Way to fill a need, a big one. It was a need, certainly was. And Kyle Duggar's performance against the Indianapolis Colts leads you to believe that it was a good move for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they may have replaced an injured Deshaun Elliott as well as they could have in the limited capacity that they could replace him. But the Steelers were not out there hunting for replacements, and nobody is upset that they didn't get replacements. This wasn't an opportunity to say, oh, well, we have to replace this guy. We have to replace this guy. This wasn't change Darius Slay's role or find a new Calvin Austin. This was the Pittsburgh Steelers need to act as if they are Super Bowl contenders and if they are hunting for a Super Bowl. And Super Bowl hunters, Super Bowl contenders tend to make the moves that people see coming, but add the splash to make you feel, ooh, maybe that was it. Maybe that was the move that they needed to make to get them over the hump. And the Steelers have been trying to get over the hump for so long that they desperately needed to let everybody know and see that was the move that could have done it. But they didn't. There's one saving grace here, and we'll dive into it. But overall, the Pittsburgh Steelers and their fan base are disappointed this morning, and understandably so. It does not mean the season is over. It is a long way from over. And the Steelers were not outclassed by anybody but the Indianapolis Colts, who they just beat. Besides that, it was a bunch of teams that do not really have a chance at a Super Bowl who are making moves as if they were competing for a Super Bowl. Maybe that's enough to give you some hope. And again, there's one caveat. There's one reason for optimism in this entire situation, and we'll dive into it, that maybe keeps the Pittsburgh Steelers in that splash, that, oh, that's a Super Bowl move right there, alive. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily dose of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Before we get going, hit that like button. Can't thank you enough. I come to you every morning, Monday through Friday, with a little bit of news, a little bit of analysis. And today is the morning after the trade deadline. The reactions yesterday were not good. Nobody was sitting around super pleased that the Pittsburgh Steelers did not make a move, especially when Jacoby Myers goes for a reasonable price tag, Rashid Shaheed goes for a reasonable price tag, and Jalen Waddle doesn't go at all. Everybody's sitting around going, Steelers could have made that move. Steelers could have made that move. Mike Tomlin did not help by going to the podium just hours beforehand and telling everybody, I like shopping, with a big smile that made you feel as if the Pittsburgh Steelers were getting aggressive. And then insiders were telling us that the Pittsburgh Steelers were getting aggressive. There were rumors floating around about Marvin Harrison Jr. phone calls, and the Pittsburgh Steelers walked away with the same group of wide receivers that they had 12 hours before and Marquez Valdes-Scantling on their practice squad. Not a situation that anybody feels good about. But the offensive side of the football has not been the issue all season long. And the Steelers' offense right now is not a Super Bowl winning offense. It's not going to put up 60 points when you need it to put up 60 points. It's not going to win a shootout with Patrick Mahomes. It couldn't even win a shootout with Joe Flacco. Chances are, if the Steelers find themselves in a situation come January where they really need this offense to click, it's going to have a hard time clicking the way that they need it to. Darnell Washington is tight end 1, and Pat Freiermuth as the second leading receiver on the roster is not what anybody looks at and says, that's elite. That's as good as it gets. But the offense has not been the issue. It's been the defense. Because if you could keep a team to under 20 points, the Pittsburgh Steelers would be undefeated. They'd be as good as they get in the NFL. And this offense, nobody would care about it at all. They'd say, look at this offense is scoring 25 to 35 points a game, and the defense is shutting down teams to 17 to 20 points a game, that's a winning formula. That's how you do these things. And the Steelers are built to win a Super Bowl off of their defense. Their defense has just been such an utter letdown that they can't compete. And they are the problem within the entire ecosystem of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, there's reason to look at this and say, maybe they can fix it still. Maybe there is that splash move remaining. And that splash move is the guy we talked about yesterday, who we'll talk about again today, but in a different light. If the Pittsburgh Steelers want to calm the nerves of everybody who is fired up right now, and everybody is fired up right now, there is believers, obviously, a lot of people sitting around saying the Steelers are going to be just fine. They were just fine. They're 5-3. They just beat the Indianapolis Colts. Why are we freaking out? And then there are a lot of people saying not making a move at the trade deadline is the wildest thing you could have done. That all goes away because if the Pittsburgh Steelers made a move for a corner, there would be no conversation. It would be, well, they did one thing that they needed to do, and maybe that's enough. Okay, well, that option's still out there. And the Pittsburgh Steelers still have an opportunity to go fill that hole and make everybody believe maybe that was just enough. Maybe that was the missing piece to get the defense working to where everything is just good enough. That move is Asante Samuel Jr. And we talked about it yesterday, and I'll talk about it again today, but in a different light, because this isn't they should go out and sign him and he's the perfect fit. This is you are now redeeming yourself to say, yesterday, our head coach made it seem and alluded to that they were going to make a move. That move didn't happen. But it sure feels like a Mike Tomlin walk to the podium and tell you, I told you I like shopping, for the Pittsburgh Steelers to go out and sign Asante Samuel Jr. and act as if that is the trade deadline acquisition. And if that's the case, that's fine. Steelers just did exactly what they needed to do. You needed to go out and do something. Wide receiver was the expectation because the Pittsburgh Steelers were looking for a wide receiver since the beginning of the offseason. Since the moment that they traded George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys, they turned attention and said, we have to find somebody, at least one other person. And no matter how many times Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin kept saying Roman Wilson, Roman Wilson, Roman Wilson, it hasn't been Roman Wilson. But the defensive side of the ball is the problem, and the cornerback room is the problem. And if the Steelers go out and they get a corner after the trade deadline and Asante Samuel Jr. and convince him to come to Pittsburgh, then they did just enough at the trade deadline. They got a starter quality corner that they would have to get into football shape, and that would take a couple of weeks. But a starter quality corner without giving up the trade. And I think that's a win. I think if you walk away with Kyle Duggar and Asante Samuel Jr., you did enough. You just had a different game plan than me and 90% of the population out here looking for a move to happen. But you did what you needed to do, and you filled the holes that you needed to fill. And Kyle Duggar and Asante Samuel Jr. are wins. Big ones. That's good enough. The Steelers still have an opportunity to win this thing, but they have to go out and win it. They can't sit around. Because if they do, when they take this roster and this team into the back half of the season, and that's it, this is what they're dealing with. They are not a Super Bowl contending team. They are not all the way back. I do not trust that this defense is elite again because they had one good game against the Indianapolis Colts where Daniel Jones didn't really look that great. Sorry. Was it a good performance? Yes. Was it one that could turn everything around? Certainly. Do I trust that that's the case? Not at all. But you go out and you add two pieces to your defense, two starter quality pieces to your defense. Well, you did what you needed to do. You put the effort in there, and you have to look at that effort and say, that's a win for the Steelers. That's one that you could bank on and say, yeah, they walked away winners at the trade deadline. They did what they needed to do. And maybe this defense is good enough to take that next step forward and remain forward. Maybe it opens the door for Jalen Ramsey to remain at safety and for everything to slow down for this defense, and it works. You kind of have to hope that's the case. But again, the Pittsburgh Steelers got to take that "I love shopping" quote and take it into free agency and say, target one is Asante Samuel Jr., and we're not leaving here without him. Convince him. It's the one thing Mike Tomlin is better at than any coach in the NFL is convincing guys that they want to play for Mike Tomlin. Everybody wants to play for Mike Tomlin. Great. You got one objective. Get the guy who's on the free agency market, who starts in the NFL, who's played 50 games, who's got 6 interceptions, and who's now available and has interest from several teams to come to your football team. And if you can do that, again, the attitude of everybody should change, because at that point you won. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of Steelers to Go, your daily dose of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, find all my work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. Before I head out of here, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Can't thank you enough for what that does for me, my family, and Jacob, and the entire AST family. With that said, I know they didn't win one yesterday, but maybe they'll win one today. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.